The Encounter Deep Space Patrol Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike, watching the endless void of space through the main view screen. The massive battleship had been patrolling the Outer Rim territories for 3 months, now, protecting the human colonies from any threats that might emerge from the unknown regions beyond. At 2 kilometers long and bristling with weapons, the Thunderstrike was humanity's answer to the dangers of deep space. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as the crew went about their duties. These were seasoned veterans, men and women who had served together through countless battles against pirates, rogue AI fleets, and hostile alien species. They knew their ship inside and out, every weapon system, every defensive measure, every trick that could keep them alive in a fight. "Captain," called Lieutenant Marcus Webb from the sensor station, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. "I'm detecting an unknown contact approaching from Vector 77 Mark IV. Distance approximately 50,000 kilometers and closing." Chen walked over to Webb's station, her expression serious. First contact situations were always delicate, especially out here in the frontier regions where anything could happen. "What can you tell me about it?" "It's definitely artificial, ma'am. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our databases. Size appears to be roughly equivalent to a heavy cruiser, but the design is completely foreign." Webb paused, checking his readings again. "They're not trying to hide from us, Captain. If anything, they seem to want us to notice them." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Yellow alert. All stations report readiness status, and get me a communications channel ready in case they want to talk." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing exactly what needed to be done. The Thunderstrike's massive weapons remained powered down, but every system was ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. Humanity had learned long ago that peaceful intentions didn't guarantee peaceful outcomes. First contact. 20 minutes. Later, the alien ship came to a stop at exactly 10,000 kilometers distance. It was sleek and elegant, with flowing lines that suggested advanced engineering and artistic sensibility. To human eyes, it looked more like a piece of sculpture than a warship. "Captain," called Communications Officer Lisa Park, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel. They're using a universal translation protocol that's actually quite sophisticated." "Put them on screen," Chen ordered, straightening her uniform. Making first contact with a new species was always a historic moment, regardless of how it turned out. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a tall, slender being with pale, blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes. It wore what appeared to be a formal military uniform decorated with intricate patterns and symbols. When it spoke, its voice was melodious but carried an unmistakable tone of superiority. "I am High Commander Zelthos of the Keltharian Imperial Survey Fleet," the alien announced. "You will identify your vessel and state your purpose in this sector of space, which falls under Keltharian jurisdiction." Chen kept her expression neutral, though she noted the assumption of authority in the alien's words. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Thunderstrike. We are conducting a routine patrol of this region to ensure the safety of human colonies. We were not aware that any other species claimed jurisdiction here." Zelthos made a sound. That might have been laughter, though it held no warmth. Human colonies, how quaint. Another primitive species attempting to expand beyond their capabilities. The alien's eyes swept across what it could see of the bridge behind Chen. "Your vessel appears crude but functional. Tell me, Captain Chen, how long has your species possessed interstellar travel?" The condescending tone was becoming harder to ignore, but Chen maintained her diplomatic composure. "Humanity has been traveling between the stars for over 2 centuries. We've established numerous colonies and maintained peaceful relations with several other species." 2 centuries, Zelthos repeated, as if the number amused him. "The Keltharian Empire has been expanding across the galaxy for over 10,000 years. We have incorporated hundreds of species into our domain, always for their own benefit, of course. Primitive civilizations require guidance to reach their full potential." Behind Chen, she could see her crew exchanging glances. The word "incorporated" had an ominous ring to it, suggesting conquest rather than cooperation. Lieutenant Commander David Torres, her executive officer, moved closer to his station where the ship's defensive systems could be activated with a single command. Growing tensions. "We appreciate your offer," Chen replied carefully, "but humanity prefers to chart its own course. Perhaps we could establish some form of cultural exchange program instead. We're always interested in learning from other civilizations." Zelthos waved a hand dismissively. "Cultural exchange is premature until we have properly assessed your species' capabilities and potential value to the Empire. This requires a comprehensive scan of your vessel and technology." The alien's tone became more authoritative. "You will lower your defensive screens and allow our sensors full access to your ship's systems." The bridge of the Thunderstrike fell silent. Every human present understood the implications of such a demand. Allowing an unknown alien species to scan their most advanced warship would reveal classified information about human military capabilities, potentially putting every human colony at risk. "I'm afraid that's not possible," Chen said firmly. "Our regulations prevent us from allowing foreign powers to scan military vessels. However, we'd be happy to provide basic technical specifications through normal diplomatic channels." For the first time, Zelthos appeared genuinely surprised. "You are refusing a direct order from a representative of the Keltharian Empire. Do you not understand the consequences of such defiance?" "I understand that you've made a request, and I've explained why we cannot comply," Chen replied, her voice growing colder. "Perhaps we should table this discussion and focus on establishing proper diplomatic relations between our governments." The alien's multifaceted eyes seemed to narrow, though it was difficult to tell with such an unfamiliar face. Primitive species often fail to grasp the realities of galactic politics. "Very well. Since you refuse to cooperate, we will conduct our scan anyway. Do not attempt to interfere, or we will consider it an act of aggression." Chen felt her jaw tighten. "Commander Zelthos, I must strongly protest any unauthorized scanning of our vessel. Such actions could be considered hostile and provoke an international incident. Your protests are noted and dismissed," Zelthos replied curtly. "Begin the scan," he ordered someone off-screen. The scan begins on the Keltharian vessel, Science. Officer Vix initiated the deep penetration scanning sequence. The Keltharians had perfected this technology over millennia, using it to analyze the capabilities of countless species before incorporation into their empire. The scanners could penetrate any known shielding and reveal the most intimate details of a vessel's construction and capabilities. "Scan commencing," Vix reported to his commander. Initial readings suggest typical primitive construction, heavy use of metallic alloys, crude energy systems, inefficient space utilization. Nothing unexpected for a species this young. Zelthos nodded with satisfaction. "Continue the analysis. I want complete specifications on their weapons, shields, and propulsion systems. The sooner we understand their limitations, the sooner we can begin integration procedures." But as the scan progressed deeper into the human ship's structure, Vix's expression began to change. His elegant features, normally composed and confident, slowly shifted to confusion, then concern, then something approaching alarm. "Commander," Vix called out, his melodious voice taking on an urgent tone. "I'm detecting some unusual readings. The human vessel's armor plating is extensive. Much more extensive than initial scans suggested." "How extensive?" Zelthos asked, still not particularly concerned. "The outer hull appears to be 15 meters thick, composed of multiple layers of materials I don't immediately recognize. But that's not the strangest part." Vix paused, double-checking his readings. "The armor isn't just thick, it's active. I'm detecting energy patterns throughout the hull structure, as if the metal itself is somehow powered." For the first time since beginning the conversation with the humans, Zelthos felt a flicker of unease. Powered armor? That's unusual for a primitive species. What about their weapon systems? Vix was now frantically working at his console, trying to make sense of the data streaming in from their sensors. "That's where things become truly strange, sir. The weapons I initially detected as crude kinetic projectile systems, they're not crude at all. The projectiles are accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, using what appears to be magnetic field manipulation on a scale I've never seen before. How significant a fraction? Zelthos demanded. Approximately 30% of light speed, sir. And that's just their standard ammunition. I'm detecting specialized projectiles that appear to be designed for... Vix's voice trailed off as he stared at his readings in disbelief. Designed for what? Zelthos snapped. Designed for penetrating the hulls of ships much larger than their own. Ships the size of our dreadnoughts, sir. Or larger. The bridge of the Keltharian vessel fell silent. As the implication sank in, no primitive species built weapons designed to fight enemies larger than themselves unless they had experience doing exactly that. Deeper revelations. As the scan continued, more disturbing information emerged. The human ship's energy systems were far more sophisticated than they had initially appeared. What had seemed like crude fusion reactors were revealed to be something much more advanced, generating power levels that seemed impossible for a vessel of its size. Their primary reactor, Vix reported, his voice now tight with worry, is producing energy equivalent to a small star, but they're only utilizing a tiny fraction of that output. Most of their systems are running at what appears to be minimum power. That can't be right, Zelthos said, but his voice lacked conviction. Run the scan again. I've run it 3 times, sir. The readings are consistent. This vessel is operating at perhaps 5% of its total capacity. Another officer, Navigator Kelm, looked up from his station with growing alarm. Commander, I've been analyzing their engine signatures. These aren't simple propulsion systems. The gravitational distortion patterns suggest they can manipulate spacetime itself. Their faster-than-light travel doesn't use hyperspace lanes like ours does. They appear to be bending reality around their ship. Zelthos felt something cold settle in his stomach. Species that could manipulate spacetime were not primitive. They were among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, the kind that the Keltharian Empire usually went to great lengths to avoid. What about their defensive systems? He asked, dreading the answer. Vix consulted his displays, his hands now visibly shaking. Their shields aren't energy barriers like ours, sir. They appear to be some form of localized spacetime distortion that redirects incoming attacks into parallel dimensions. The computational power required for such technology is... He paused, checking his calculations again. It's beyond our current understanding. And their crew complement? That's perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all, Vix replied quietly. Based on life sign readings, this vessel carries approximately 1,500 personnel, but the ship is designed to be operated by a crew of only 300. The rest appear to be specialized combat personnel. Combat personnel? Marines? Sir, soldiers trained specifically for boarding enemy vessels and fighting in hostile environments. Their equipment signatures suggest personal armor and weapons that rival our ship-based systems. Zelthos stared at the human ship on his view screen, and for the first time in his long career, he felt genuine fear. This wasn't a primitive exploration, vessel, or a colonial transport. This was a warship built by a species that had clearly been fighting serious wars for a very long time. The revelation, the terrible truth, as the Keltharian scan reached deeper into the Thunderstrike systems. Science. Officer Vix made discoveries that shattered everything he thought he knew about primitive species. His hands moved frantically across his console as he tried to process the impossible data flowing from their sensors. Commander Zelthos, Vix called out, his voice barely controlled. You need to see this immediately. The scan has reached their central database systems. What did you find? Zelthos demanded, though part of him no longer wanted to know the answer. Records, sir. Military records, battle reports, technical specifications. Vix's face had gone pale, his multifaceted eyes wide with horror. Commander, this species, they've been at war for their entire recorded history. Not just small conflicts or territorial disputes, major interstellar wars involving hundreds of ships and multiple star systems. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Zelthos walked slowly to Vix's station, dreading what he was about to learn. Show me, he ordered. The main display filled with human military records translated by their computers. Battle reports from conflicts with names like the Centauri War, the Vegan Crisis, the Android Rebellion, and dozens of others. Each report detailed massive fleet engagements, planetary sieges, and technological innovations born from desperate necessity. They've fought artificial intelligences that tried to exterminate biological life. Vix read from the records, his voice growing, more strained with each revelation. They've battled hive mind species that consumed entire worlds. They've survived attacks from entities that exist partially outside normal space-time. That's impossible, Zelthos whispered. No single species could survive such conflicts. They would have been exterminated centuries ago. That's what I thought too, sir. But according to these records, they didn't just survive. They won. Every single conflict ended with human victory or strategic stalemate that prevented human extinction. Navigator Kelm looked up from his own analysis of the human ship's databases. Commander, I've been reviewing their ship classification systems. What we're looking at isn't even considered a major warship by their standards. This vessel is classified as a patrol battleship, used for routine security operations. Routine security? Zelthos felt dizzy. What do they consider a major warship? Kelm consulted his readings with obvious reluctance. They have classifications for vessels called planet killers, system clearers, and something designated as extinction-class dreadnoughts. The technical specifications are beyond our current understanding of what's physically possible. The horror of human engineering as more data poured in from the scan, the full scope of human military technology became apparent. Weapons Officer Thane, who had been analyzing the Thunderstrike's armaments, finally spoke up with terror in his voice. Their torpedo systems, Thane reported, don't just destroy ships. They're designed to eliminate entire fleet formations with single projectiles. The warheads contain what they call dimensional cascade weapons that can tear holes in space itself. And their defensive systems? Zelthos asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would be equally terrifying. Their point defense grid can track and engage millions of targets simultaneously. Not thousands, Commander. Millions. They're prepared to defend against swarm attacks from enemies we can't even imagine. Vix had continued his deep scan of the human databases and made another horrifying discovery. Sir, I've found their strategic planning files. They don't just prepare for wars against other spacefaring species. They have contingency plans for fighting enemies that exist in higher dimensions, entities that feed on stellar energy, and races that can manipulate time itself. Stop, Zelthos said weakly, but Vix continued reading from the human records. They have protocols for destroying entire solar systems if necessary to prevent enemy expansion. They've actually done it before, sir, multiple times. There are records of humans collapsing stars to deny resources to hostile forces. The Keltharian bridge crew stared at their displays in stunned silence. They had encountered many species in their empire's expansion, but nothing had prepared them for this. Humans weren't just another primitive civilization to be easily conquered and absorbed. They were apex predators on a galactic scale. Understanding the true enemy communications officer Lyra, who had been monitoring human transmissions during the scan, made a discovery that filled her with dread. Commander, I've been analyzing their internal communications protocols. The way their crew coordinates during combat operations suggests they've fought together for years, possibly decades. This isn't a peacekeeping force, sir. These are combat veterans. How can you tell? Zelthos asked. Their communication patterns, the speed of their responses, the way they anticipate each other's actions. These people have been in life or death situations together many times before. They move and think like a predator pack. Science Officer Vix had found something even more disturbing in the human databases. Sir, I've located their historical records regarding first contact with other species. Every single encounter has ended in one of three ways: peaceful coexistence based on mutual respect, complete avoidance due to incompatible biology or psychology, or... He paused, unable to continue. Or what? Zelthos demanded. Or the complete Extinction of the hostile species, sir. Without exception. When humans determine that another race represents an existential threat, they don't just defeat them. They ensure that threat can never arise again. The implications hit the Keltharian crew like a physical blow. They had approached humans with arrogance and threats, assuming they were dealing with primitives who could be easily intimidated. Instead, they had potentially triggered the attention of the most dangerous predator species in their region of the galaxy. The captain's true nature back on the Thunderstrike, Captain Chen had been monitoring the alien scan through her ship's sensors. What she saw concerned her greatly. The Keltharian vessel was conducting a military analysis, not a scientific survey. They were mapping her ship's capabilities with the thoroughness of someone planning an attack. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Torres said quietly, "their scan is incredibly detailed. They're learning everything about our capabilities." "Let them look," Chen replied calmly. "Sometimes the best way to avoid a fight is to make sure the other side understands what they're starting." Torres nodded, understanding his captain's strategy. The Thunderstrike was designed to be intimidating once its true capabilities were revealed. Any species advanced enough to conduct such a detailed scan would eventually realize what they were looking at. "Ma'am," called Tactical Officer Ryan Hamilton from his station, "the alien ship's energy patterns are changing. They appear to be distressed about something." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "They're starting to understand what kind of ship they decided to threaten." On the Keltharian vessel, the mood had shifted from confident superiority to barely controlled panic. The scan results had revealed a truth that shattered their understanding of galactic politics. Humans were not primitives to be conquered, but apex predators who had evolved in a hostile galaxy through constant warfare. The moment of truth. Zeltos stared at the human ship on his view screen, and for the first time in his career, he felt genuine terror. Everything about the vessel screamed danger to anyone who understood what they were looking at. The heavy armor, the massive weapons, the overpowered systems running at minimal capacity. It was all the signature of a species that had been forged in the fires of interstellar war. "Sir," Vix said urgently, "I'm detecting energy buildups throughout their ship. Nothing aggressive, but they're clearly preparing for potential combat." "Are they targeting us?" "No, sir, but their weapon systems are coming online, all of them." Through the view screen, the human captain's calm face remained unchanged, but Zeltos could now see the predator lurking behind those eyes. This was not someone who would be intimidated by threats or impressed by claims of imperial authority. This was someone who had faced down existential threats and emerged victorious. "Commander," Navigation Officer Kelm said quietly, "I recommend we withdraw immediately. Our databases contain records of several species that attempted to conquer or intimidate humans. None of those species exist anymore." Zeltos knew Kelm was right, but retreating would be an admission that the mighty Keltharian Empire had encountered something it couldn't handle. His pride warred with his survival instincts as he watched the human ship's weapon systems complete their activation sequence. The Thunderstrike now showed its true nature. What had appeared to be a crude, primitive vessel was revealed as a perfectly designed instrument of war. Every line of its hull, every placement of its weapons, every aspect of its construction spoke of a species that had learned to build ships capable of surviving in a hostile universe. The retreat. "Open a channel to the human ship," Zeltos ordered, his voice barely steady. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen, her expression politely curious. "Yes, Commander Zeltos? Have you completed your unauthorized scan of our vessel?" "Captain Chen," Zeltos began, then stopped. What could he say? That he was sorry for threatening her? That the Keltharian Empire had made a terrible mistake? That they would never again underestimate humanity? "We have completed our analysis," he said finally. "It appears we may have misjudged your species' development level." Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "Really? And what did your analysis reveal?" Zeltos looked at his terrified crew, then back at the human captain who sat calmly on the bridge of one of the most dangerous warships he had ever encountered. "It revealed that the Keltharian Empire has much to learn about humanity. Perhaps we should postpone any discussion of integration until our respective governments can establish proper diplomatic relations." That sounds very wise, Commander, Chen replied. I'm sure our diplomats will be very interested to learn about your empire's policies regarding the incorporation of other species. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. If the Keltharians attempted to conquer humanity, they would face the full might of a species that had been fighting and winning interstellar wars for centuries. We will be departing this system immediately, Zeltos said. Please convey our respects to your government. Of course, Chen said pleasantly. Safe travels, Commander. And do remember, humanity values peaceful relations with all species willing to treat us as equals. The channel closed, and Zeltos immediately ordered his ship to retreat at maximum speed. As the Keltharian vessel jumped to hyperspace, fleeing from the human battleship, he could only pray that his empire would be wise enough to avoid any future conflicts with humanity. Back on the Thunderstrike, Captain Chen watched the alien ship disappear and turned to her crew. Well, that was interesting. Stand down from yellow alert and resume normal patrol operations. Should we report this to Earth Command? Torres asked. Of course, Chen replied, but I suspect we won't be seeing the Keltharians again anytime soon. They're smart enough to recognize a superior predator when they see one. As the Thunderstrike continued its patrol through the Outer Rim territories, its crew unaware that they had just prevented an interstellar war simply by being exactly what they appeared to be. Humanity's guardians, forged in conflict and ready for whatever threats the galaxy might hold. The scan had revealed the truth about humanity to the Keltharians, but it had also revealed something about the aliens to the humans. Not every species in the galaxy was hostile, but not every species was wise enough to avoid unnecessary conflicts either. Captain Chen made a mental note to recommend increased patrols in this sector. If the Keltharians were expanding into human space, there might be others as well. And while humanity preferred peace, they had learned long ago that the best way to maintain peace was to be prepared for war. The Thunderstrike continued its patrol, a silent guardian watching over human space, ready to defend against any threat that might emerge from the vast darkness between the stars.